This is not your everyday podcast. Real conversations, real stories.
Well, I got an exciting one for you guys today. One of the most unique attorneys, let alone people I've ever met, founder of the Windecher firm and RED, a restorative justice organization. Welcome to Innovators and Litigators.
Thanks, Nick. It's good to be with you, man. I know we have a long history, so being able to spend some time with you to just kind of catch up and giving me the opportunity to share my journey and what I do, I really appreciate it.
I'll be honest with everyone here. I've known David for a long time, but in many ways, I'm kind of starstruck as well. But I'm really excited to have him on today because you couldn't be more perfect for this. And we've talked about this a few times. The whole reason that I do this podcast is to kind of dispel this myth that the American dream's dead, that you got to be born to a wealthy family, you got to be surrounded by wealth for you to get ahead, for you to succeed. And you couldn't be a better example of why that's false.
And I agree. I think the American dream is real. It's just a matter of being diligent and facing adversity and how you respond to adversity. It'll define you, the way you respond to it. Some of us are born into circumstances we didn't choose. I was born into poverty, and I could have chose to be angry and bitter about the situation, but I wasn't. I was kind of focused on what I could do to pick myself up by my bootstraps and just kind of climb the social rungs, which, from being stuck in the lower socioeconomic environment in Miami-Dade County to coming to Buckhead and practicing law and owning my own law firm and running a restorative justice organization that has reduced recidivism in the community. It's just proof that the American dream is real. You just have to want to get it.
And I love that. So, and I'll get right into it because I want to make sure that people understand who you are and how incredibly unique you are. So you tout yourself on your website as from defendant to defense attorney, prominently on your website. Tell the audience what that means.
I came from Argentina in 1990, and I was arrested right away. As soon as I got here, a poverty-driven arrest. I made a mistake. I stole something from a retail store, not knowing that I couldn't afford certain things. I just didn't understand how to respond and cope with that situation, so I stole something. But this was 1990, so it was the height of the Get Tough on Crime movement. I got put on probation, and my life changed completely. School-to-prison pipeline for youth is a real thing, and it kind of almost set in motion my carceral sentence. For 11 to 19, I spent most of my adolescent life in the system. I mean, they used to call me juvenile, defendant, probationer, delinquent, and those things kind of defined me for a while. I was affected psychologically. So I didn't have a lot of friends growing up because the people that lived in the neighborhood didn't want their kids hanging out with the 11-year-old on probation, right? Which I get. I'm a father myself now, so I want good examples for my kid. Well, fast forward from 11 to 13, I was going to a school called JFK, and if you're from the hood, you know what JFK means, right? If a school's called JFK, you're really deep in the hood. And so I'm walking home on Fridays, and I was getting jumped because of the way I look. I'm Hispanic, I'm Argentinian. However, I look as Caucasian as it gets. And so the environment didn't understand that, and I would get assaulted and jumped. So I got initiated into a gang at age 14. That gave me some kind of protection, but it also exposed me to certain things that caused me to start getting arrested more. At 14, I was doing the graffiti for the gang, and I didn't really enjoy that because it wasn't putting any money in my pocket. And while I was in school, I wasn't really learning much. The American compulsory education system is truly broken. They were teaching me things in 9th grade here in America that I had already learned in Argentina in 5th grade, mathematics-wise, right? And the only math I really cared about was getting money. And so when I turned 16, I could drop out without any consequence to my parents. I did. And at that point, I went to the gang members and I was like, look, I don't want to do the graffiti anymore. I want to start getting into peddling drugs because I need to make some money. So I started doing that. And the arrests started happening, right? I was averaging an arrest every two arrests per year from 11 to 19 because I had 13 total by the time I was 19 years old. But at this point where I'm starting to sell the drugs, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm dropping things off. So I wanted to kind of open up a drive-through dope spot, if you will. And that's what we did. We ran it like a corporation. We had a payroll, we had meetings, we had schedules, we created a staff around it. And so we started making some money. Of course, I didn't have any financial literacy, so I put all my money into cars and to helping my parents out. But the wrong attention came. And so the serious arrests started coming because, in these environments, people want what you have if you have something. And so I had to constantly defend myself to protect the things that I had gotten from my drug money. And it got real difficult. At one point, I got arrested for aggravated battery for defending myself. Someone tried to rob me. I defended myself more aggressively, and it resulted with me being charged at the age of 16 as an adult. So I was facing 15 years in prison, and I was being held in the Miami-Dade County Pretrial Detention Center, which now you put a 16-year-old with 35, 50-year-old men who are facing real serious violent charges. And that really kind of affected my psyche, how I saw things. It also made me a more hardened criminal because I had to survive. There was no other option but to survive, and it was a war zone.
This is why your story is so incredible, because when you start at such a point, and a lot of people do that, you know, somebody who came from a lower economic status as well, once you get that quick money, man, it's so hard not to want that anymore. It's so hard to pull back and go, I'm going to do it slow. I'm going to do it the right way. So I want to make sure that we explain, who is Red?
So Red was my nickname as a gang member for obvious reasons.
Right.
So everybody gets a nickname. That was my nickname, which coincidentally happens to be the name of my organization, because it's Rehabilitation Enables Dreams. And I wanted the criminal justice system to focus on rehabilitating nonviolent offenders versus being punitive like it's historically been. I did get that kind of money, and it was really difficult because it's not like I didn't try to get a job, Nick. The arrest when I was 11 years old caused me not to get the jobs that kids at 14, 15 get. So when I was old enough to try to get a job, I asked my parents if I could, applying for Blockbuster Video, Little Caesars, all these places I could just, you know, yeah. And I couldn't get these jobs, even though they're minimum wage and they're not really serious roles in our community. I just needed a job, but they would keep rejecting me because of my background.
So you couldn't even do it right if you wanted.
I couldn't. And so that's why I resorted to selling the drugs. It's not like I was a bad person that wanted to sell drugs to make money. I tried to get the jobs, and when I couldn't get the jobs, I had no choice. So it's survival of the fittest in the hood, and you have to do what you have to do. And for me, I was going to survive. I was going to eat. My family was going to be helped, and that's what I was going to do. And so I had to resort to selling drugs, and a lot of people deal with that.
Absolutely.
You know, Georgia has 10.8 million people per the last census, and 4.8 million of those people have a criminal conviction that's preventing them from housing, from, you know, employment, gainful employment, from occupational licensing to become entrepreneurs. And so this is the kind of system that we have in place. And I experienced that at an early age. So I got really aggressive with selling drugs, and that's how I made money. Now, not knowing what to do with that money, invest it, and things of that sort, it created another set of problems, enemies that I didn't want, that were trying to get what I had. And so, you know, I had to defend myself, and that resulted in a bunch more arrests.
So how do you, you know, in many ways, and I really feel this way, once you make that choice, you kind of dig deeper, right? And society presses on you even harder. Well, now you have that label. Now you're that criminal, or you're whatever that is. How do you even get out of that hole when you get so deep? No one wants to hire you. No, you know, you've already been there. You've seen what you can make money quickly.
Well, for me, I always was a good person. Like, my parents taught me good values. We had guiding principles. We had good core values in my house. Like, love each other, be kind, be generous, you know, treat each other well. My mom and dad were just great examples, and we had a lot of love in our home. So I always knew kind of how to treat other people, how I wanted to be treated, how to give respect, how to demand respect. And but the problem was that the society didn't respect me because what I was on paper. And so to try to pull myself out of that was really difficult. But what happened with me, Nick, was that around the arrest 7 or 8, I started firing my public defender. Because I was like, all you guys want me to do is go serve time, right? So I was like, I'm not doing this no more. I'll just defend myself, and maybe I can get a better deal. And I started doing that. I started processing discovery, arguing motions, and I'm 16 years old. And so I realized, like, I have intellectual capacity. And my dad always told me, he's like, I came to this country so that you could have an opportunity. And so make something of yourself. Don't make me waste every little thing. Because my dad used to work really hard from 4 in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. You know, he couldn't be there for me in the ways that he wanted to, like I can be for my son now, right? I can provide him resource. Well, my dad used to tell me that, and I used to think, and as soon as I started seeing that, I started seeing prejudicial racial thrust of the criminal justice system. What I mean by that is, I would see how, like, my black and brown friends would go to jail while I go to probation, or they would go to prison while I go to jail. And I started realizing my skin color was playing a role, but I was not cognitively developed or emotionally developed enough to understand that until later. Right. But what I was doing is I was handling my own cases. I was getting better results than my public defenders were getting me. And so I thought to myself, yeah, you know, I could be a lawyer. I can actually do this. I have to just get formal training. I had no idea how to climb the rungs to become a lawyer. So after my last arrest, I told myself, I got out of the system, and I said, do not look back. I'm not coming back. So I wouldn't turn my head back when I got released. You know, it's kind of like the movies, right? They open the gate, you're out, right? And you just got to figure out if the bus is going to be your thing, or somebody's going to pick you up. So I just started walking. I kept walking, and I kept telling myself, you know, I'm going to be a lawyer one day. And so because of my criminal background, it took a very long time. It takes 8 years to become a lawyer. You know that. But it took me 15 years.
And I need you to explain this to the audience, because most people I meet with, it's just about like, oh, how did you grow your business? Or how did you do these, like, you know, relatively calm things? But I need you to explain to the audience how unheard of this is, because explain the fitness, aspect, because I know you had to dance with that.
Skipping a few parts of the process, right? Bachelor's degree, then a few jobs in between that were
Where'd you
just
go
kind of.
to?
I went to American Intercontinental University. It was kind of like a fast track process, but what ended up happening is because I dropped out of school, I had to do all these provisional classes, right? And so it took me like 3.5 years of provisional classes to get to college credit courses. So my bachelor's degree itself took almost 7 years. And then I went to, I graduated from American Intercontinental in 2005. And that's when I wanted to start going to law school. I started applying to law schools, and because I was impoverished and never had any tax filings, I had what was called a fee waiver. So the Law School Admissions Council allowed me to not have to pay for the applications. I applied to 50 law schools, and 48 of them rejected me right away. I kept those letters as motivation. And 2 schools said, you know what, we're interested in vetting you further. Those schools were GSU and John Marshall.
Both. Wow.
Which is where I met you, obviously, right? So it didn't work out with GSU, but with John Marshall, they gave me a chance. And they told me straight up, they're like, look, here's the deal. We're willing to take a chance on you, but yeah, we don't know if you'll get barred because of your background. So you might be a legally educated paralegal if you can't get a license to practice law. And I'm like, well, what's the alternative? Go back to the streets?
I'm actually really proud of them, because this is actually something I talk about a lot. I didn't know that.
And I'll give them a shout out, right?
Yeah.
Michael Mears,
Wow.
Cheryl Harrison, Shannon O'Keefe. Like, these people really loved on me. They heard my story, and they're like, it resonated with them in a way that when I came to visit John Marshall in 2009, early 2009, I saw the city, I envisioned myself coming here, and I was just very honest with them about my situation. I was like, I just grew up in poverty, and I made a lot of bad decisions, but I know that if you give me a chance, I will do anything I can to show you that I do have high character, that I'm not a broken person.
And that's exceptional, because I run into so many times, and it's actually a problem I have with the law school philosophy, is they just, they sell you dreams, man. It's just like, once you're a lawyer, you'll make millions of dollars, and it doesn't matter what you do, and you'll be in big law. And none of that came to fruition for me. I mean, you and I grew up very similar times. We graduated undergrad at the same time. We went to law school at the same time. And that wasn't my experience. I mean, I had to fight from the day I got out. I mean, I went from making 60-year bartending to 38 as a lawyer.
I remember, how you conducted yourself in law school. That's kind of why I was drawn to you as a person, because like you come from small beginnings like I do, and you were just kind.
Been in a law firm.
Yeah. And you were always kind with people. You were really generous with your time. You were friendly with everybody. You had a great disposition about you. You were really positive. But look at you, like it kind of transcended into your professional life. And I think because it matters, the way that we treat people is ultimately how we'll be, judged, I believe. Obviously I'm a faith-based individual, so that kind of philosophy of how you handle interactions with other people is something important.
Well, I think in many ways, maybe it's delusion, whatever it is. I think you have to first believe you can do it before you can begin the steps.
Oh yeah, you have to envision. And when I was in law school, people would ask me, amongst other students, like we would be talking, and people who are not students, were at networking events or whatever, they'll ask, oh, what do you do, And I was like, I'm a lawyer. And some students would say, you can't say that, you're still a law student. I was like, nah, buddy, you can't say that. But I can, because I'm a lawyer. In my head, I already am, And I was working with a guy named Manny Aurora, who's, top of the food chain when it comes to criminal defense. So I'm shadowing this guy because John Marshall put me on with him. Dean Mears referred me to Manny, and I'm, getting these repetitions at the highest level of criminal defense in the state of Georgia. And so I felt like I was going to do it. And I always was doing it in the criminal justice system myself.
How empowering is that? Like, if finally somebody believed in it, man. Because that's something I struggle with. I never felt like anybody was like truly believed in me. Truly was like, you can be exceptional. You can be above it. Everyone was like, you're smart. You can pass the bar or things like that. But
man, he was a godsend blessing for me, because I remember when they referred me to him, coming from the hood, you don't have that kind of interview polished skill set, right? I didn't look him up. I just got his address, put on a suit, and showed up. And as soon as I walk in, I was a little intimidated, because you see all the pictures of him with like elected officials, with professional athletes, with celebrities. That's who he represents. And so I sit down with him, and he basically had a moment with me where he looked at me in the eye and he said, listen, man, how old are you? And I told him, I was like, I'm 31. And he asked me, how old do you think I am? And I said, I don't know, 38, 39. And he's like, yeah, exactly. So you'll graduate law school at 33, 34, and you're going to be way behind. So if you want to come into this practice, do not waste my time. And he was very frank about that. He's like, if you're going to come in here, you have to work harder than everybody else, because your situation is more difficult than everybody else's. So do not waste my time. And that challenge was exactly what I needed. And so this man mentored me and he invested in me. Another thing that I can share about law school experience was like how cutthroat it is, right? Because
it's brutal, man.
it's so crazy.
First year of law school, I've never felt dumber.
Yeah, and then when you're trying to get internships and externships and all that, like Manny referred me to the DeKalb County District Attorney's office, and it was a backdoor process, right? Because Manny has a name, and so I didn't have to go through the whole formal procedure to get an interview and all this and that, and it's all in my book. So I get hired, and then one of the students that you know, which no one really knows who this person is, I've never really disclosed this, only I really know this. This person sent an email to the DA's office, and because he didn't make the cut for the internship, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know y'all hire former convicts,"
Right.
you know, and so I got terminated, and I ended up kind of circling back, and Robert James was the district attorney
Spin
back
back.
then. Yeah, and this dude was like, "Listen, man, come on in, and we'll sit down and talk." And then he just told me, that's when the idea to publish my book came out, because he's like, "You're the American dream. You're the kid who came out of poverty, who struggled to get into law school, who wants to protect the community by advancing public safety, by being an assistant district attorney, by interning here. And it would be a travesty if you don't accept your job back." And he stuck his hand out. He's like, "Will you please come work for us? You're not going to be here very long, but during that time, you might help us understand something about nonviolent offenders that we wouldn't otherwise know." And so I kind of was shocked, but then the government believing in me, Robert James specifically, believing in me was a big deal, because that ended up helping me get, certified fit to sit for the bar exam.
Yeah, walk the people through this, because fitness for most people, fitness is kind of the last stage of becoming an attorney, making sure that you're, not going to be a fraud or do bad things, because there's some power in being a lawyer. So kind of, I know you can't say everything, but kind of walk people how this shouldn't, in many ways, shouldn't have happened. Like you're such a one in a billion people. What was that process like? Because I knew it took a lot of help and support. Like specific people had to go to the bat for you.
It was kind of scary, and that entire time of that season in my life, I was uncomfortable the entire time, because I didn't know what the result was going to be. I just could show up every day and do the best that I could, but the reality is it was completely out of my control. The only thing I can control then, Nick, was the way I responded to whatever situations were placed in front of me. I had to fill out the application, see what happened, and then if they wanted to interview me, I would respond to that. So what ended up happening is Manny and Robert vouched for me. I submitted my application with those vouchers from them, and then they responded back saying that they wanted to further vet me on question 21, which you can imagine had to do with my criminal history.
So for everyone who doesn't know, I just submitted the application. That was the end. There was no, there was no letter. There was no coming interview. That was the end of it. So you already had two very prominent people going to the bat for you, and they still were worried about you.
Yeah, they sent me I had to show like how I was rehabilitated, how I plan to continue my rehabilitation, what I viewed my contribution to the community as is if I was a practicing lawyer. And I had to write a 15-page response, which to me was very therapeutic, because as I was writing it, I remember all the pain that I went through, and I thought about all the people that helped me in that process to be here. So I listed all these things out. I was like, look, this story is not just about me. It's about the people that will be inspired by seeing that someone that comes from my beginnings can actually become a lawyer. And that's what I plan to do. I plan to not just come into the practice of law to obtain materialistic possessions and economic well-being. I wanted to inspire others to get onto higher ground, to show them that it doesn't matter where you start. It's about what you do along the way and how you respond to adversity, because the reality is that we all deserve it, I mean, that's why I do what I do now, because I look at people that come from the lower socioeconomic environment who had hard and soft skills and gifts that we need as a community, as a society. And if we don't give them a chance, we're missing out on the opportunity of what they have to offer to this world. And that's what I see. I see that everybody should deserve the opportunity. And so I responded like that. And I explained to them that I was willing to come in there and meet them and look them in the eye and let them know that I'm not a broken person. I was just born into broken circumstances. And that if I was given the chance, that I would give back to my community. And that's why I kept my word. I told them that I would publish a book and that I would use every dollar that I got to create a nonprofit organization. And we did that. And now we're about to roll into year 10 of doing criminal justice reform.
You did everything you said you would, and that's and you didn't have to. And that's the cool thing, is that once they put the check on you and you've got your bar license, they can't go back and go, well, you didn't do all those things. Like, you're not a lawyer anymore. You did it because you wanted to.
Yeah, and then that created momentum in my life. The oath of attorney, right? It ends with, and so help you God. And I remember when the oath started and I'm swearing in, my mind went blank, and like my whole life just passed by me, from like my first arrest at 11, my mom crying, my dad working, my brothers and sisters struggling, all that stuff that we endured, like it flashed before my eyes. And all the people that helped me, John Marshall, Manny, Robert James, a multitude of people. And then I thought that it would give me peace that moment, but instead it gave me purpose. Yeah. And that's when I knew I was going to start RED, the organization, and I was going to come out here in the community, and I was going to help other people that were similarly situated, because I'm like, it's not just about me. Other people deserve this too. And so now you look at, we've had hundreds of people go through our program, and we've reintegrated them into the community. We have a less than 10% recidivism rate for people aged 17 to 28, which is wonderful, because historically in Georgia, that rate is 65%. So people who are age 17 to 28 who go through the criminal justice traditional method of adjudication recidivate at 65% within 3 years of being sentenced. People that go through our program, they don't recidivate because, well, I'm kind of all over the place now, but one of the beautiful things about our organization, our staff, and our board is that we have about 50 years of incarceration, custodial experiences, probationary experiences in total. And so we know what like the victim of a crime needs, and we focus on the victim because we don't want victims, right? We don't want defendants or victims. And we also know what the taxpayer deserves, right? A taxpayer doesn't deserve to keep paying into the criminal justice system in a way that produces a rate of recidivism of 65%. Well, that's ridiculous. And so we had to fix this problem. It's been going 40 years strong. And so now what we did is we created a curriculum that is used in a pre-adjudication manner. What is that pre-adjudication manner? I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of people in Georgia with criminal convictions. Well, pre-adjudication prevents the conviction. The conviction is the barrier to access to resource. And so if you can do something pre-adjudication, rehabilitate that person, give them peer forensic mentoring, emotional intelligence training, financial literacy training, job placement, and then you dismiss their case and restrict their record, that person's never coming back into the system. It's the secret sauce in criminal justice reform.
I love this. And the thing that drives me crazy about somebody who had to do it myself, who had to build all this, what I see all the time is once people make it, they just slam the door shut. Just like, I'm here now, boom. And I don't need competition. I don't need people around here. And they just slam that door shut so quickly.
How much money do you need? Yeah. How much resource do you need? Yeah. How big of a house do you need? How many cars do you need? Yeah. At what point is enough enough? And the reality is like, shouldn't we live a life of purpose? And if purpose is something that is meaningful to you, it means investing into other people, right? Because that's what it's about. It's helping your community rise above its circumstances. And if the community and the lower socioeconomic environment is safer because there's less crime there, guess what? The rest of society is fine. Everybody is safe. We don't want people struggling in the lower socioeconomic environment, because what they'll do is they'll come into the affluent areas to take opportunity for themselves. And so we need to give the people who are not getting opportunities so they can self-actualize and become tax-paying, contributing members of society. But the system, and I don't want to sound too cynical and dark when I say this,
this is important. People don't need to understand.
I've seen more perversion and corruption on this side of the law than on the streets. I mean, the things, I can't even say them. But, it's just shocking almost what I've seen practicing law.
No, it's not as shiny as it looks up, at the top. And that's what's so refreshing about having someone, and I want to talk about this a lot, is in having actually experienced it. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to just, welcome to this process. Being a lawyer is it's so clean. They do so many things. They're making sure only the right people are in, and it's intentional that they restrict how many people are allowed to have that title.
Yeah.
And you weren't clean. You weren't fit enough for it. You really shouldn't have made it through that screen.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that integrity doesn't exist is because when you are dealing with government, there should never be a compromise to integrity. It should never waver, because you have elected officials who are in charge of public matters that require them to have integrity 100% of the time. It can't ever be questioned. They should always have the best interests of the community and society. There should be no self-dealing. There should be no corruption. There should be no perversion. And there should be complete transparent accountability. That does not exist.
But you're not even talking about negligence. You're not talking about people making mistakes. You're talking about people consciously deciding, I'm going to do something I'm not supposed to.
Exactly.
And no one's going to say anything because I'm who I am.
Yes. And that, to me, is what was the most shocking thing. Because when I was inspired to make a difference, I thought that I would reach people who wanted the same. And you get up here to this point and you realize that people want to protect what they've created for themselves, whether it's power, whether it's resource, whatever it may be. They're not willing to compromise themselves for the betterment of society. Right. That's why the nonprofit work that we do is so important, is because we work directly with the individuals who we can help become better versions of themselves and contribute to community by having a voice, by being able to vote and choose who they're going to elect into those positions that influence the way that they live their lives and how they have their experiences in their communities.
So walk the audience through, how did you even create this program? I mean, For a lot of people, it's always from one side, right? I've worked in so long in this defendant office or this prosecutor's office. My job is to punish, and that will teach them. And the evidence just doesn't show that. Is that enough punishment makes you change? You know, what about your past makes you better at helping people get, not go back to that life?
Like I said, people are born in circumstances they didn't choose. Mine was poverty. Some people are mental health. Some people are substance use disorder. Why punish someone who was inserted into a situation they didn't want to be inserted into? They didn't have a choice. And so rehabilitating people who are making decisions because the options for them are all bad, they're just picking the lesser of the evil options, those are the ones that we have to invest in. Because if they had good options, they would choose right. No one's born broken. No one wants to be a criminal. No one wants to commit crime because it's fun. I mean, yes, there's some people who need to be locked up. Violent offenders, rapists, murderers, arsonists. You know, those people, we don't want them free in the community. I'm talking about nonviolent offenders, people who are selling drugs because they don't have money. They were born into a family that struggles with substance use disorder, so it's inherent. So how do we help them? Treatment. They need treatment. They need rehabilitation measures. They need educational components. They need access to opportunity. And if you treat people with respect and kindness and you invest in them rather than bet against them because of where they're coming from, you'll see they'll turn into something that you never even thought they could become. And that's what I know. And that's what my organization knows, is that we wanted to create something that would allow us to be a little bit more creative in the way we handle people who are committing nonviolent crimes. And the reality is that Georgia itself, the state, has become a leader in criminal justice reform because we had Governor Deal, who was really invested in this stuff, and he created the Special Counsel on Criminal Justice Reform, which was an interbranch, bipartisan group of people invested in researching the Department of Juvenile Justice, felony probation, and how recidivism could be reduced. So while we were in law school is when all of this started, and so I would read their yearly reports, and they created a roadmap for accountability courts, for programs that are rehabilitative in nature. And so I saw that and I was like, this is an opportunity. I have all this research that shows that people who are committing these crimes, if they're given certain resources, they self-actualize rather than recidivate. And so what I wanted to do was take that a little further. And what we did was we created a program that's 12 months in length for 17 to 28-year-olds that focuses on creating an accurate profile on each individual. So what we do is we elicit certain questions through a level of service intake at an orientation once they're selected for the program, and there's a criteria for selecting them, but we get an accurate profile on them. Do they have trauma? Have they been abused? Are they economically struggling? Are they homeless? Can they get a job? What's the issue? And so then we assign mentors to them. And the mentors that we assign are relatable mentors because these are justice impacted, reformed individuals that we, not that we only take mentors that are justice impacted, but we have people who have some life experience that help them climb the rungs by understanding how to get to the next phase.
So how do those factors, you talked about a lot of them, and I want to know, why are they important? Like, what is it, who are you trying not to bring in?
So they're important because data. There's a ton of scientific data that and I'm in, the special counsel, Pew, the Department of Justice. It's not like this is refutable data, right? This is data, this is good research and case studies. And what we're seeing is that people who have been touched by the system 5, 6, 7 times at the misdemeanor level, they're dabbling, they can't stay out themselves, right? So they're committing nonviolent offenses, boom, they hit their first felony. Well, at that point, we do this strong intervention where we help them understand that a life of crime is where they're headed if they continue down this path. So that's when we start investing into them. And these are 17 to 28-year-olds are the target demographic for us because we know people who are 17 to 28 can't be on probation too long. They lose interest. Can't be in accountability court programs that are 2 years in length. They lose interest. And so you give them a 12-month program. It's almost like we created a classroom in the courtroom, basically. So we treat them like students rather than defendants. And we give them all the resources that they need. So we go orientation, peer mentor assignment, and then we do emotional intelligence training.
This is completely different from any other program.
Yeah, so we teach them how to
Where did you come to that? What made you realize that emotional intelligence is going to be what's going to make a difference?
Well, because Fortune 500 companies are using that to help their employees develop their abilities to produce results for the corporations, right? And so EQ, which is different than IQ. IQ is usually capped at some point. You're cognitively developed. You're not going to advance your IQ, but your EQ you can always advance. You can learn how to control your emotions when you're triggered. You can learn how to be more personally aware in certain settings. You can learn how to be more socially aware in those settings. And we can also teach people how to develop interpersonal relationships that are healthy. And when you give people these soft skills, they can do anything. They can get good at interviews. They can get good at networking. They can get good at team-oriented jobs. And that's what you want. You want people with high EQ. High EQ is so important for them to socially mobilize. And there's a ton of data.
They're receptive to this? I would think you would run into some, man, miss me with that.
Oh, it's not easy to break that barrier,
Yeah.
Because, they've been let down.
Not focusing on those things is what makes you succeed, maybe in a life of crime and things like that. It's like, no, I'm not worried about how you feel or things like that. How are we going to get money? How do we do these things? It's very quick interactions.
Yeah, and we start at orientation, Nick, by explaining to them, here's the benefit to you. If you complete the 12 months of this program, you don't need a lawyer, so you don't have to invest money into a lawyer. You get your case dismissed, your record restricted, which is the term for expungement in Georgia, and you get sealed. So not only are we restricting and sealing the case that got you into the program, but those other 4 or 5 misdemeanors that are required for you to get into the program, we assign volunteer lawyers to completely clean up your record. So when you finish this 12-month program, you will have the hard and soft skills training you need to reintegrate into society. We offer you jobs, livable wage jobs, and you have no criminal record. So you're aged 17 to 28, and your whole life has been reset on a clean slate where you can now do whatever it is you want the rest of the way. And that's important for everybody, especially for taxpayers, right? Because our program costs about $10,000 per student to go through the program for a 12-month program, which is a fraction of the cost compared to the traditional methods, which you're talking close to $75,000 to $100,000 to adjudicate someone the traditional way. And we're investing $10,000. So the taxpayer is winning. The victim is also involved in the process. Before the student can get into the program, we contact the victim in collaboration with the district attorney's office, and we say, hey, victim so-and-so, this person was the person who committed this crime against you. We're looking to install them and orient them into a restorative justice program that will rehabilitate them and reintegrate them. Would you consent to that? And we have had 95% of the people say, yes, we would love for them to be rehabilitated and reintegrated because we don't want to see another victim. That goes back to what I was saying, reducing victims. And that's important because victims have trauma, and people that are living with trauma don't deserve that. And so we try to heal the entire community, A to Z.
Yeah. And I love that. You look at all the different angles on it, but it's not just about the money. Like, if we save a couple bucks. But, I mean, this doesn't exist anywhere else.
Not yet.
Yeah.
But we're working on scaling. I mean, we have copyright protection. We have trademark. The accreditation process pending right now, which means that the organization is about to become a .edu. So we're about to become a college.
So
yeah, it's
congratulations. Wild. So I want you to kind of walk through, if you can, kind of write in the book. Walk me through what this process was like. And,
traumatizing. Not all cops are bad, right? But I'll say this: it's now July 2024, and the most recent thing is this Sonia Massey thing. Just a police officer shot somebody in the face and tried to cover it up.
She was like on her knees with her hands up, right? I mean,
she was in her home.
Right.
And she got shot in the face.
Which you've seen a few times.
And the only reason we know about that now is because the body cam video of another officer present was released, where the officer who did the shooting actually turned off his body cam. And that's the kind of stuff that I dealt with when body cameras didn't exist. I mean, we were paying officers to protect us. That is something that will affect your psyche as a 16-year-old individual when a police officer rolls up and he's there to get the bag. And I don't have a problem with police officers because I have a lot of friends that are great police officers. I mean, we have former law enforcement on our board at this point, right? So I respect their civic duty, their commitment to protect and advance public safety. But the reality is that there's so much corruption in law enforcement that it makes it difficult. That's why I became a successful lawyer, because I'm not trusting a single thing from beginning to end of my case. You have to prove to me that I can trust you. Yep. Otherwise, I'm going to vet you hard. I remember one specific case, and they're all in the book. Every arrest is in the book. The incident reports, everything is in there.
Highly suggest you guys read it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, they would come to me and say, yeah, just take the 6 months. And I'm like, you do the 6 months. I was defending myself. Right. Doesn't that matter?
Yep.
No, because nobody wants to do their job.
And that's not what happens to the wealthy. I mean,
Because they can hire us.
Right.
And we come in and we know procedure, we know substantive law.
They can hire
and
experts.
The government is overloaded with a significant caseload. I mean, I just got a case right now that in Fulton County happened in July of 2018, and we just got notice of arraignment 6 years later.
It's a very early process, by the way.
I mean, is that
For anyone who
wild?
doesn't know.
I mean, and then I'm sure the prosecutor is going to come with some unreasonable offer to me. And my response is going to be like, are you kidding me? I don't even know where my client is at this point. It's been 6 years. What do you want me to do?
I don't practice criminal law, but one of my most enjoyable moment that I've ever had in my career was a ticket trial for one of my clients, which I loved her to death. And I went in, I figured I'll be the only lawyer there. They'll kick it once they see I'm here, and it'll be easy. And it was in the Caver Quarters Court. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they had the officer there, and they had a witness, and they're like, we're trying this. So either plead out or, try the case. And I'd never tried a criminal trial before. I was like, okay. I had my witnesses. I was like, let's try it.
Yeah.
And I did. I beat him. And it's my only criminal trial. And I remember going up to the solicitor and being like, pleasure meeting. Mm-hmm. She was not happy.
Yeah, and it's so funny that they do that, because that's like the culture of it, right?
Oh.
The culture is punish, 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 prosecute, 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 announce trial, and then when you're 24 hours from trial, oh, you know what? We changed our mind.
Right.
Well, you could have changed your mind 6 months ago and saved tons of taxpayer monies in this opening up the venue, and getting a jury ready. Why are we doing all this? And then that's what drives me crazy about the culture of the criminal justice system is like, let's look at your case, because have you ever factored into the equation that someone might actually be innocent, or they might not be as culpable as you think they are?
Unheard of.
So there should be some kind of negotiated outcome. But everything is like, try it, try it, try it. And then when you get to the trial, they buckle.
Yep.
And that gets a little annoying.
Well, that's what I love about what I do. I mean, it's such a beautiful job and purpose to help people that did nothing wrong. They don't have to pay me anything up front. Mm-hmm. And it's all based on my results. And you're going to get multi-billion-dollar corporations. And these people would never have had a lawyer. Never. Mm. And that's what happens to us as well on the civil side, is that it's always, offers move from $20,000 to $40,000 to $100,000 to $1 million within, the last month of right before trial, because the hammer is coming now. Mm-hmm. But plaintiff's work, contingency work specifically, is amazing, because what you do is you just have a client come in and they're like, this happened to me. Mm-hmm. And I can't afford this. I can't pay you hourly. I can't pay anything, and when you believe in the case and you believe in the client, you are, when it comes down to it, going against multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's not the defendant. It's not, even when it's a corporation, you're not really going against the defendant. You're going against the massive insurance company that's been retained to defend.
Fully resourced.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally have hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers to fight you, and literally billions of dollars. And so you are that sword and shield for that client who could never begin to compete with those people.
It must feel good to be able to help people who can't help themselves otherwise.
And it's incredible to speak power, speak truth to power and say, you're going to do the right thing or else, and I'll make you do it. And it's incredible to see offers move from 0 for years to $1 million to $5 million to $20 million when they know that it's up, the jig's up. They're not going to walk away. And insurance companies pay attention to those things. One of the most important questions they ask very early on when a lawsuit is filed is, can they fund this? Or can we bleed Nick out? Can we say, oh, Nick will give up on this in a year? And then right before trial, it's, will he try it? Will he try this? Or will he take the money? And that's why they beg to mediate a year out.
I already know your energy. I remember from law
I'm
school.
dangerous now, man. I don't care.
And once you have the ability, the capacity, which you always had, and then have the resource to push it through the end, you might as well, protect your client all the way through.
I don't need anything else now.
Yeah, and it gives that person hope, right? That they've been wronged in life, but then they obtain justice.
Yeah. But you do run into some people who've just been doing it for 30 years. And I know your client's a liar. I know
and they become cynical about it.
Everyone's a liar.
Mm-hmm.
No matter if your client's permanently brain injured and can't open a door.
Practicing law, right? And on the defense side of a criminal, it's like at some point the government has to look at their case and say, hey, listen, you know what? This officer entered the house against constitutional rights. This officer searched the vehicle without following protocol. So instead of fighting it, let's just do the right thing, and let's just get to a point where everybody gets a favorable outcome. But, I hear that you say that, and it's like, I guess it's the same on both sides of it. You just got to keep fighting. You got to keep show up, and you got to keep fighting. I'm just God for me, that God gave me the strength to keep going in this direction. And before we conclude, I want to make sure that I get to say that on your podcast, because like I was saved October 16, 2001. I gave my life to God, and that's kind of when my shift started happening for me. I didn't have much worry. I didn't have much fear or doubt, because I thought, I asked him for forgiveness for all the ugly things that I did, and I just asked him for a life of purpose, and he's gotten me to this point. And I just always want to praise my Heavenly Father for bestowing the abilities upon me to get to this point, help other people, because I see, in my practice and in the restorative justice work that I do, I see a little bit of who I was and all of the people that I'm helping. And that's, to me, makes me show up more. It makes me get up early, stay up late.
One of the most important things, and there's a saying in wealth management and things like that, there's three things that are important to become wealthy. And one is just diligence. One is being able to do what you need to every day. Second is time. Third is money. And it really is. I mean, just showing up and doing it. Dedication is so important. And it's great to hear where you get that passion from, where you get that dedication from, because I think that's what most people are lacking when it comes to taking that first step. I look back and people see what we're doing now, and they're like, well, you're so lucky to have done this. I can't believe you've gotten that. And there's definitely some luck involved. But, I remember those days, just being lost in law school, and no one ever taught me how to do any of this. I mean, I'm first generation everything. My parents were like, go to school. Well, what do I study? I don't know. Well, how do I pay for it? I don't know. Well, where do I go? I don't know. And it was this very vague push into a certain direction. And we could not have come out at worse times. I mean, every financial crisis possible.
Oh my gosh,
no jobs
yeah.
anywhere. I mean, you and I hit the exact same road speed bump.
That's why we're kind of like anomalies if you think about it.
Absolutely.
And I am grateful for where I'm at in life. I don't lose sight of how much gratitude I should feel on a regular basis, because I'm very blessed. And to be able to do what I do, it's a privilege. It truly is a privilege. And then you're right. We came out of one of the most economic depressing moments in the history of our country.
No jobs in 08.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Yeah, the housing market was defunct, completely crashed, and people were offering $50,000 a year jobs to be a lawyer.
We were lied to, man. I mean, we were told that just graduate undergrad. I'm not this magic person that always knew he was going to be a lawyer. I was just trying to survive. I was bartending, and then I graduated, undergrad, and there were just no jobs. It was my piece of paper was worthless. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go back to school, which is what a lot of people did back then. And luckily I was destined to be a lawyer, and it worked out. But I wasn't some guy who was, woke up and was like, I'm going to be a lawyer when I was 6. It just wasn't the way it worked. I just was trying to survive and figure out. And then I buried myself in $250,000 of debt because no one was there to help me.
Yeah, that's the other part that was difficult. That was like another part of the challenge mentally while you're in law school. You're kind of like, every day I'm accruing interest. Every day I'm accruing more principal, because more classes, more books, more housing need, all of this stuff. And it's like, it's really hard. But I'm glad that they have some programs now for people who get into public service after they get into law school. That's such a blessing for them, because, being a prosecutor, as long as you're ethical and have integrity, a police officer, as long as you're ethical and have integrity, you should have these loans for school forgiven or discharged, because it's important. I mean, you don't want people living with that kind of weight. You know what it's like. You became successful on the private side of it. I became successful on the private side of it as well. But I can't imagine, we're a small percentage of the people that actually get to this.
I should not have. I mean, for all intents and purposes, law school should have ruined my life. I mean, to go from no debt, $60,000 a year, to $250,000 debt, making 38 after graduating top of my class is gross. I mean, that just shouldn't happen. And there was no one there to push me out. No one tells you this story, law school. And that's why I love to hear that John Marshall was there for you, because all I heard was, well, it doesn't even matter if you pass the bar, because everyone wants a JD, and everyone, you can work in anything. You can work in HR, you can work in business, and it's a golden ticket to be a lawyer, and it's just not true.
Yeah, and John Marshall, they've been great in the sense that even after I graduated, I started kind of like a process for them of helping other justice impacted people. I've had like 6 people go through them that I've referred, several that are very close friends of mine, who John Marshall gave a chance to, and they now have careers, and they now have the same ability to impact other people's lives. And so John Marshall sometimes gets a bad rap, for whatever level of tier law school they're considered. But I think, to me, they're upper echelon just simply because of the way they treat people.
And I'll just toot our own horns real quick. I'm really proud of our graduating class. Like, I'm proud of the people who were around.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, totally.
Really successful people. It's shocking, as you said, for a lower tier law school.
Crazy to think that so much time has already passed. You know, we graduated in May of 2012.
Yeah, I did a little faster, but yeah.
Oh, you did a little faster?
Yeah, I did 2.5 years, December 2011.
Okay, so you graduated a little. Yeah, I had to pace myself.
I did. I just wanted to get out.
I don't blame you, man.
I didn't go to law school to go to law school. I went to law school to be a lawyer, and I did. I took it very seriously. I took every summer class. I didn't want to be there. I mean, as simple as that. So yeah, and I want to return back to it. Like, what was it like writing this book? What was important for you to get across? You know, what was it like to even write it, and how has it been since about explaining to people?
The book started in my mind when the DA's office terminated me and rehired me. That's when I realized that I had an original story, that not everybody was going through the same thing. And it was difficult and painful because once I got hired at the DA's office, I called my family, an emotional moment, you know, and explained to them that I'm now working for the government, the same government that prosecuted me 13 times. My dad was really proud. My mom was excited. My little brothers and sisters were inspired. And then, you know, to get terminated because someone sent an email like that, it was just a bit of a shock. And so when I got hired back, I remember Robert James called me the American Dream, and he explained to me that I would be a change agent, and that maybe I didn't see it then, but eventually I would. I started writing the book, and what I did was, Nick, I started by going into the memory banks and just putting things that came to mind on a little Post-it. And for about 4 years, I threw, and then, you know, I'm in the second year of law school, and I finished it. So this was 2011 I started. I published it in 2015. So for all those years, I would write something, whether it was an experience in the moment that was challenging because of my background, or something that happened that created the challenges that I was dealing with. And so I threw these Post-its in a shoebox, and then one day I just sat down, I pulled them all out, put them on a whiteboard, I started looking, and I started writing them out, and I started creating sections and chapters in the book. And that became very therapeutic because it was like a healing process for me to get all those emotions out, you know, just seeing the memories of my mom, you know, providing us with lunches, us wearing the same clothes every single day, my dad driving a piece of crap car to go to work to provide for us, you know, the stuff that I dealt with police, the number of arrests and all that stuff, just getting it out, realizing that I wasn't a bad person. I was just dealing with bad circumstances. And then I hired a woman to help me with the publicity process, you know, the publishing and all that. And then we did a big party. At that point, I was already licensed when we released the book. I also did the Florida bar and I got licensed there. And so the book was just kind of like a moment in time that I'll never forget, because it was the final steps of my rehabilitative journey. That it didn't matter that I was born poor. It didn't matter that the system tried to destroy me. It didn't matter that I got into a bunch of debt. What mattered is that I was alive, that I had opportunity, and that I had the ability to live a life of purpose. And so those kind of things to me was the catalyst for where I'm at today. For me, you know, I should have been incarcerated. I should probably have been killed in the streets. I should have probably not made it into law school. But I kept telling myself that no was not an option. And if no was the answer, I didn't find the right answer yet. If I was being denied, I just needed to keep pushing. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, I became the American Dream.
And you didn't waste this opportunity. One of my favorite reviews that I read, it was of NPR in Miami. It said, it's a coming-of-age story about perseverance, survival in the face of abject adversity and poverty. It's a story of redemption and salvation. It's a story of hope. And my sign-off for everything is every year, show up every day. It adds up to greatness. And I really believe that. And that's why I like having people like you on this, is that you have to push people. Because right now, you're here, and that's how it worked. But I remember looking back and being like, I don't know what the next move is. I don't know what the path is. I don't know if this is going to add up to anything. And it did. It ripped my soul out to go from making more bartending to graduating top of my class.
And that's how I've always been, the no quit mentality. And I teach that to my son. Is he tells me, he's 4.5 years old, and he wants to be a soccer player. You know, we're Argentinian. He saw Argentina win the World Cup. He saw us win the Copa America. Yeah, and vamos Argentina, you know. And he wants to be a soccer player. And I told him, some days, you know, and you're only 4.5. You should have fun now. But if you really want to do this, you just have to keep trying. And so this kid keeps trying, and it inspires, you know, to be the father that I get to be because of what my dad did and sacrificed for me is so meaningful. I get to share all these experiences with my dad, and he's so grateful that now I get to share with him the things that he wished he could have done with me but couldn't. Because my dad played soccer. I played soccer, but then I started getting arrested. And my son is amazing. He's so good. All the coaches tell him. And so now I have the time and the resource to invest into him to give him the chance. And what he has to do, even though he's only 4.5 years old, which sounds a little crazy, right? Is just be consistent.
Yeah. So I want to kind of end towards what your 5-year goals are for Red, and how let people know where they can find you, and then how they can help if they want to.
So our website is stoprecidivism.org, and that's stoprecidivism.org. It's a mouthful.
Recidivism.
Yeah, RECIDIVISM.
MISSISM.
Right? I've been executive director for 10 years, and I eventually will transition, and I will have a role on the board to use my story to go out there and create awareness. The director of programming, his name is Zeus Luby. He's a wonderful guy who we wouldn't be where we are without him. I mean, the investment he has made, the sacrifices he has made for other people, for our organization. And he's going to take over for me, and I'm going to go ahead and create awareness. The beautiful thing about what we've been able to do over the last 10 years, Nick, is that we actually created a curriculum that we own. And this curriculum, we can go off into other jurisdictions and offer it to them. And that generates revenue for us, a hedgehog concept, if you will. And that hedgehog concept created an economic model for us to become self-sustaining, we want the donations from individuals who believe in us. We want the corporate partnerships. We want the grants and all that. We will always do those things. But creating our own revenue based on the curriculum we created is a blessing, because now we're going to be able to help other jurisdictions while self-sustaining ourselves. So we are the proof of concept. We have the data. We track all the data. And so my goal is going to be go out there and I hate even using this term, but sell our software so that other courthouses can use it and implement it to reduce crime. And that's my goal. So the next 5 years, the plan is to transition away from Red as executive director, have a board role, and then go out there and create awareness about criminal justice reform, about how to reduce recidivism, and how to invest in our youth so that they don't become members of the criminal justice system long term.
I can't think of a better use for money, and I'm very excited for what you've done in the amount of time. So I always close with a question that I love to ask people, and I think your answer will be very unique. So I asked all my guests, I said, how do you know you've won in your mind? Well, it's hard for people like us, A-type people, to kind of lay our swords down. When do you feel like you've succeeded? We talked a lot about freedom and taking care of our families and things like that. What is your end goal when it comes to, okay, I did it right, I can clock out from this world?
I've never compromised who I was internally to myself. I am spiritually intact. I can look in the mirror and say, I know exactly who I am. I've never wavered on God in good times and bad times, because I don't want to be the guy like, oh, thank you, God, for all these blessings, or not thank him for when the adversity strikes. Because adversity and the way you respond to it is what will ultimately define you as a person. Yeah. And so for me, I have my health intact, I'm spiritually intact, and I am mentally intact. So what that means is that I can continue to create impacting opportunities for our community. And that, to me, is what I've always set out to do. I wanted to create jobs, and I wanted to create impact. So I have the ability to do those things. And so for me, that's what matters most, And there's a saying that I learned from a professor, Sharon Reed, rest in peace, in undergraduate. And she told me, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And that, to me, was so powerful, because you have to continuously reinvent yourself, right? And just because I created with what I did with Red doesn't mean that I stay in this position forever, right? I need to transcend and grow and scale. And so I have the ability, because we have such an amazing staff. The director of operations, Jessica Manning, you met her, right? She's incredible, right? Our organization is growing. And so for me, it's a blessing to be able to have that, my mentality that I will always reinvent myself, and I always try to find the best version of myself. And that impacts others to do the same thing, especially those who are closest to me, my son. So for me, I feel that my gratitude will be intact, and that's one of the things that matters most for me.
So honored to have you on here, dude. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, man.
So always a reminder.
Go Niners.
We'll talk about that later. Remember, everyone, when you put in the work every day, it adds up to greatness. I can't thank you enough, David.
Thank you, bro.
And I hope you guys enjoyed this. What an incredible story. Thank you for joining us on Innovators and Litigators. You guys have a great day.